They want what they want. They don't care about...
Acá, un momento, señor.
A ver, dale.
Acá está.
Hey. Al piso, hijo de puta.
This is happening to you. The money is life. Era un muy buen negocio.
De mar, señor.
Como Valdemar.
Ay, delicioso.
No te quería lastimar, es que a veces es mejor llevarte.
Oh, he's doing it with it, too.
Berto, it's time to get married.
Good husband, bro. Looking good.
You want to run?
No.
Te voy a extrañar mucho, ¿viste?
I don't want to mess this up.
Esperando.
The first gunshot doesn't sound real. It cracks through the wedding music, like somebody snapping a tree branch in half, and for one strange second, Captain Jordan Wright just stands there holding a glass of whiskey, watching flower petals drift across the courtyard in slow motion. Then the bride screams. Everything changes. The little villa in northern Mexico had been loud all night, soldiers laughing too hard, tequila bottles stacked beside half-melted candles, someone singing badly near the pool while heat lightning flashed over the mountains. Jordan hadn't relaxed like this in years. Men like him forgot how. Even now, his shoulders stayed tight beneath his dress shirt, instincts crawling beneath his skin like insects. Then another shot tears through the air. A groomsman drops face first into the dinner table. Silence. Not true silence. Worse. Crying, glass breaking, chairs scraping against stone. Somewhere nearby, a horse starts shrieking in panic. Jordan moves instantly. Old training, old muscle memory. Down, he roars, flipping the table as bullets punch through white tablecloths and exploding wine bottles. Red liquid splashes across the ground like blood. For a terrifying second, he can't tell the difference anymore. The musicians are already dead. Masked gunmen flood through the front gate carrying rifles painted gold under the courtyard lights. Cartel soldiers, young, smiling. One of them fires into the air just to watch people scatter. Another drags the groom across the tiles by his ankle while the bride claws at the ground screaming his name. Jordan's squad came here unarmed. That's the part that keeps repeating in his head. Unarmed. Lieutenant Malik reaches him first, breathing hard. Cap, they blocked both exits. How many? Too many. A child cries somewhere beneath the overturned tables. Jordan crawls through shattered plates and finds Sophia, the groom's 6-year-old niece, curled beside her dead grandmother. Her tiny hands are pressed over her ears so tightly her knuckles look white. It's okay, he whispers automatically, though nothing about this is okay. The smell hits him then. Gunpowder. Blood. Burned meat from the overturned grills. And underneath it all, desert rain drifting in from the hills. One of the cartel men grabs the bride by the hair and drags her toward the fountain. Jordan sees the tattoo on the gunman's neck, and his stomach tightens instantly. Black Scorpion Cartel. Not random killers, predators. The leader steps into the courtyard slowly, almost casually, wearing polished boots untouched by dust. Everyone goes quiet around him. Even his own men lower their weapons. That tells Jordan everything he needs to know. Power like that doesn't need shouting. The man removes his sunglasses. Older than expected. Calm eyes. He studies the terrified wedding guests like he's inspecting cattle at an auction. Then he points directly at Jordan. There he is. Jordan feels the air leave his lungs. Not confusion, recognition. The cartel leader smiles faintly. Captain Wright, I was wondering when we'd finally meet. Malik turns toward him sharply. You know this guy? Jordan doesn't answer, because he does. Or at least he knows the name whispered through military briefings years ago. Octavio Reyes. Smuggler. Executioner. Ghost. The kind of man soldiers talked about carefully, like saying his name too loudly could summon him from the dark. But Jordan thought Reyes was dead. The cartel boss walks closer while bodies lie cooling around the fountain. 3 years ago, Reyes says softly, you destroyed one of my camps near the border. He kneels beside the groom, presses a pistol against the man's chest. Cost me my brother. Jordan's pulse pounds harder now, pieces clicking together too late. This wasn't an ambush. It was revenge. The bride begs for mercy through sobs. Reyes barely looks at her. His eyes stay locked on Jordan the entire time. You soldiers cross borders thinking there are no consequences. Tonight you learn differently. The gun fires. The bride's scream echoes off the mountains. Something inside Jordan snaps. He lunges across the courtyard before anyone can stop him, smashing a broken bottle into the nearest gunman's throat. Blood sprays hot across his hands. Malik tackles another attacker while guests scatter toward the kitchens. Bullets erupt everywhere again. Stone explodes beside Jordan's face as he grabs Sophia and dives behind the fountain. Chaos swallows the villa whole. Now it feels like war. Jordan steals a rifle from a dead cartel soldier and fires twice. Controlled. Precise. 2 men drop near the gate, but more keep coming through the smoke outside. Trucks, headlights, armed silhouettes pouring in endlessly from the desert road. Too many. Way too many. Malik reloads beside him, eyes wide. Cap. They brought an army. Jordan scans the courtyard quickly. Half his squad is missing. Several civilians are wounded. The only escape route runs through the hills behind the estate, but reaching it means crossing open ground under cartel fire, and Reyes knows that too. Across the burning courtyard, the cartel boss watches calmly beside the fountain. No panic, no anger, just patience. Like a hunter waiting for exhausted prey to finally stop running. Then Jordan notices something that freezes his blood cold. Reyes isn't looking at the soldiers anymore. He's staring directly at little Sophia trembling in Jordan's arms. And he smiles. Sophia's tiny fingers dig into Jordan's sleeve so hard they hurt. She's trying not to cry now. Kids do that sometimes when terror becomes too big for sound. Around them, the wedding villa burns brighter, orange flames climbing the curtains while smoke rolls across the courtyard ceiling like storm clouds. Jordan checks the rifle magazine. 9 rounds left. Not enough. Move! Malik shouts as bullets hammer the fountain above them, spraying chunks of marble across their backs. 1 round catches a bridesmaid sprinting toward the kitchens. She collapses instantly. Nobody can reach her. Jordan grabs Sophia tighter. Listen to me, he says, forcing calm into his voice. When I tell you to run, you don't stop for anything. Understand? She nods once. Silent, eyes huge. Another explosion rocks the courtyard. The cartel has started torching vehicles outside the gates, black smoke pouring into the night sky. Jordan risks a glance over the fountain and sees Reyes standing exactly where he was before, untouched by the chaos around him. Calm, patient. Like this entire massacre is already finished in his mind. But here's the thing. Jordan notices the gunmen tightening their perimeter instead of rushing forward. That means Reyes wants someone alive. Probably him. The realization settles cold in his stomach. Malik crouches beside him, blood running down one arm. We can't hold here. Hills are our only shot. Jordan scans the distance to the rear wall. 40 yards of open courtyard. Dead guests everywhere, flickering firelight, gunmen covering nearly every angle. Suicide. Then Sophia whispers something so quietly he almost misses it. There's a tunnel. Jordan turns sharply. What? My uncle showed me. Her lips tremble. Wine cellar. Secret tunnel goes outside the hills. Malik stares at her. Kid, now would have been a fantastic time earlier. She was scared, Jordan snaps. And suddenly Reyes starts walking toward them. Slowly. No rush. Boots crunching over broken glass while his men continue firing around him. Jordan can finally see the older scars lining Reyes's face, pale marks disappearing beneath his collar. Soldier scars. Not criminal ones. That thought hits wrong. Reyes stops maybe 20 feet away. You know what your problem is, Captain? His voice stays strangely soft despite the gunfire. You still believe there are good men and bad men. Jordan keeps the rifle trained on his chest. You crossed into my territory 3 years ago, Reyes continues. Burned villages. Killed boys following orders. Your government called it justice. He smiles faintly. Tonight, I simply return the favor. That little girl your favor too? Jordan growls. For the first time, Rhea's expression hardens. Children always pay for the sins of men. You should know that by now. Something flickers in Jordan's memory then. Dust storms, border villages, screaming civilians after a raid gone wrong, his squad commander ordering silence afterward. No, don't think about that now. Malik suddenly throws a smoke grenade across the courtyard. Thick gray clouds erupt instantly. Gunfire turns wild. Screams echo through the smoke. Go! Malik roars. Jordan grabs Sophia and sprints. Everything becomes noise and shadows. Heat from the fires burns his face while bullets rip blindly through smoke around them. He crashes through the kitchen doors shoulder first, cooks and terrified guests diving out of the way. Plates explode against the walls. Somebody's crying beneath a table. Cellar? Jordan shouts. Sophia points frantically toward a pantry. Behind them, cartel gunmen storm the kitchens. Jordan fires twice without slowing. One man falls. Another crashes into shelves stacked with liquor bottles. Flames spread instantly across spilled alcohol. The room erupts into orange light. Malik slams the cellar door behind them and drops the iron lock into place. Heavy footsteps thunder overhead now, screaming, more gunfire. Then silence. Not complete silence. Worse. The muffled sound of someone dragging metal across the floor above them. Jordan freezes. They're blocking the exits, Malik whispers. The cellar smells damp and ancient, lined with dusty wine racks disappearing into darkness. Sophia leads them deeper underground until they reach a cracked stone wall at the very back. There, she whispers. Jordan pushes against it. Nothing. Help me. Both soldiers shove harder. Stone grinds loudly before part of the wall slowly swings inward, revealing a narrow tunnel disappearing into darkness beneath the hills. Cold air rushes out. Fresh air. For one brief second, hope sparks alive inside Jordan's chest. Then a voice echoes calmly from the cellar stairs above them. I knew about the tunnel. Rise. Jordan's blood turns to ice. The cartel boss descends slowly into the cellar, holding a shotgun, several gunmen behind him. Smoke curls around the staircase, light overhead. He looks almost disappointed. You military men always think survival makes you heroes, Rhea says quietly, but surviving only means the nightmare continues. Jordan steps in front of Sophia automatically. Reyes notices, smiles again. Then he raises the shotgun directly toward the little girl. And this time, his finger tightens on the trigger. The blast deafens the cellar. Jordan moves before the sound even fully reaches him, throwing Sophia sideways as the shotgun roars through the darkness. Stone explodes behind them. Wine bottles shatter across the walls. Red liquid rains down like blood. Malik opens fire instantly. The narrow cellar erupts into chaos, muzzle flashes strobing through clouds of dust and smoke. One cartel gunman tumbles backward down the stairs. Another crashes into the wine rack screaming as bottles collapse over his head. But Reyes never flinches. Jordan sees it clearly now. The man doesn't fight like a criminal, too controlled, too precise. Every movement economical, calm under pressure, military. Reyes pumps another shell into the shotgun. Still protecting children, he mutters almost sadly. Jordan fires first this time. The bullet tears through Reyes' shoulder, spinning him sideways into the wall. His men panic instantly, spraying wild shots through the cellar, while Malik drags Sophia toward the tunnel entrance. Move! Jordan empties the rest of his magazine covering them. Deafening echoes hammer through the underground chamber. Then, click, empty. A gunman lunges through the smoke with a knife. Jordan catches the attacker's wrist mid-strike and slams his head against the stone wall once, twice, skull cracks. Body drops. But another rifle appears from the darkness. Jordan's stomach tightens, too late. The shot fires, and Malik suddenly jerks backward violently, blood bursting across his chest. Silence. Not real silence. Just that horrible, stunned moment when the brain refuses to accept what the eyes already know. Malik stares down at the spreading red stain across his shirt, confused, almost embarrassed. Ah! He breathes softly. Then he collapses. Malik! Jordan dives beside him while bullets continue smashing through the cellar overhead. Sophia cries openly now somewhere inside the tunnel. Malik coughs blood across his lips, trying to lift his rifle again even though his hands barely work anymore. You gotta go, he rasps. No, Jordan. Malik grips his sleeve weakly. Listen to me. Another explosion shakes dust from the ceiling above them. They'll kill the kid first, Malik whispers painfully. You know they will. Jordan's chest feels like it's caving inward. He and Malik survived 4 deployments together: Afghanistan, Syria. Border operations nobody officially admitted existed. Malik was there through all of it, the only person Jordan trusted completely anymore. And now he's dying in a wine cellar beneath a burning wedding. Malik laughs weakly, coughing more blood. Man, this is a terrible vacation. Jordan almost smiles. Almost. Then Rhea's voice echoes again from the smoke-filled staircase, calm as ever. You can still end this, Captain. Jordan slowly lifts Malik's rifle. Rhea steps into view, clutching his wounded shoulder, blood soaking through his dark shirt now, yet somehow the injury only makes him look more dangerous, more human. Which is worse. Give me the girl, Rhea says quietly, and the others leave alive. Jordan's pulse hammers harder. Others? There are no others left. Rhea sees the realization hit him. You still don't understand what tonight is. His eyes narrow slightly. 3 years ago, your unit raided San Tomas village searching for weapons. You remember it? Jordan freezes. Dusty streets flash through his memory again. Women screaming. Houses burning under tracer fire. Orders shouted through radios. And one terrified boy holding a rifle too big for his arms. No, God. Reyes continues walking closer through the smoke. My younger brother lived there. His voice remains controlled, but grief leaks through the cracks now. He was 16. Jordan remembers the boy. He remembers pulling the trigger. The cellar suddenly feels too small to breathe in. It was a mistake, Jordan says hoarsely. Reyes' expression darkens instantly. Mistake? His voice finally rises. You killed children and called it collateral damage. Gunfire erupts upstairs again somewhere above the villa. More cartel vehicles arriving. More chaos spreading through the hills outside. But underground, everything narrows into this moment. Jordan looks at Malik bleeding out beside him, at Sophia trembling in the tunnel entrance, at Reyes standing there with decades of hatred burning behind his eyes. And the worst part? A piece of Jordan understands him. That's what breaks him. Reyes notices it too. There it is, he whispers. The truth. Jordan lowers the rifle slightly. Then Sophia suddenly screams. One of the surviving cartel gunmen has circled through the tunnel behind them, grabbing her violently by the arm. She kicks and claws wildly while the man drags her backward into the darkness. Jordan reacts instantly. He sprints into the tunnel without thinking. Reyes shouts something behind him, but the words disappear beneath pounding footsteps and Sophia's terrified cries echoing through the underground passage. The tunnel twists sharply beneath the hills, narrow and suffocating, ancient dirt walls closing tight around them. Jordan sees the gunman ahead, dragging Sophia deeper into darkness. He pushes harder, faster. Then the tunnel floor suddenly disappears beneath his feet. Jordan crashes downward into blackness. Cold water slams into him like concrete, and somewhere in the darkness below the mountains, something else moves beside him. The water is freezing. Jordan surfaces violently, choking as darkness swallows everything around him. The underground river smells rotten, ancient, like something buried too long beneath the mountains. Above him, the tunnel ceiling has collapsed completely, cutting off the only light. Sophia, he shouts. Only echoes answer back. Panic claws through his chest now. Real panic. Not battlefield adrenaline. Worse. The kind that squeezes your lungs until thinking becomes impossible. Jordan drags himself through waist-deep water, hands scraping slimy stone walls while distant footsteps echo somewhere ahead in the dark. The gunman still has her. Then he hears it, crying, faint, trembling, alive. Jordan pushes forward faster, stumbling through the underground stream until a weak orange glow appears ahead. Firelight. He rounds the bend and freezes instantly. The tunnel opens into a massive hidden cavern beneath the hills. Old military crates line the walls. Weapons, fuel barrels, radios. Enough supplies to arm an army. Cartel operations hidden beneath the wedding estate the entire time. But Jordan barely notices any of it, because Sophia kneels near the cavern wall with a pistol pressed against her head. The cartel gunman grins when he sees Jordan emerge from the darkness. Young kid, maybe 20. Nervous eyes pretending to look fearless. One more step. Jordan throws a knife before the sentence finishes. The blade buries itself straight into the man's throat. Blood sprays across the cavern wall. The gunman collapses choking beside Sophia while the pistol skids across the stone floor. Jordan rushes forward instantly, pulling the terrified girl into his arms. "You okay?" She nods against his chest, sobbing hard now. And that's when gunfire explodes above them, not nearby, directly overhead. Jordan looks up sharply. Dust rains from the cavern ceiling, while distant explosions shake the mountainside. Something big is happening outside the villa now. Military helicopters, maybe, or rival cartel forces, hard to tell. Then radios across the cavern suddenly crackle alive all at once. Repeat, federal units entering sector, multiple armed contacts north ridge. Ray Eyes is escaping underground. Jordan's blood turns cold. Escaping. This entire attack wasn't revenge alone. Reyes planned an exit route beneath the estate from the beginning. The wedding massacre was cover for something bigger. Jordan scans the cavern again more carefully now. Maps spread across tables. Smuggling routes marked through the border mountains. Photos, satellite images, military schedules, and one photograph sitting alone near the radio equipment. Jordan picks it up slowly. His stomach drops. It's his squad, taken years ago during the San Tomas operation. Every soldier's face circled in red marker. Hunted. A sound behind him. Jordan spins, raising the stolen pistol. Reyes stands at the cavern entrance, bleeding heavily from his shoulder wound. Alone this time. No gunman. No shotgun. Just exhaustion carved deep into his face beneath the flickering emergency lights. For several seconds, neither man speaks. Water drips somewhere in the dark. Sophia hides behind Jordan silently. Then Reyes looks at the photograph in Jordan's hand. "I spent 3 years finding all of you." Jordan's jaw tightens. So this was never about the wedding. No. Reyes takes another slow step forward. The groom worked for federal intelligence. Tonight they planned to trade information on my operations. His eyes harden. "You simply arrived at the wrong celebration." Jordan almost laughs at the insanity of it. "So all those people died because you wanted revenge and protection?" Rye says nothing. "Because it's true." Another explosion shakes the cavern overhead. Louder this time. Close. The mountain groans. Jordan notices Reyes glance upward briefly. Concern. Real concern. "What's happening up there?" Jordan demands. "The Federales brought air support." Reyes breathes harder now, blood loss finally catching him. "If they collapse these tunnels, everyone down here dies." Jordan studies him carefully. Something feels wrong. Too calm again. Then he sees it. A detonator in Reyes' left hand. Small. Military grade. Jordan's pulse spikes instantly. "You rigged the tunnels. If I cannot leave," Reyes says quietly. "Neither can they." Sophia whimpers behind him. Jordan raises the pistol. "Drop it." Reyes almost smiles sadly. "You still think this story ends with one villain dead and one hero surviving?" He shakes his head faintly. "Men like us don't get endings like that." For the first time, Jordan notices tears mixed with dust on Reyes' face. Not rage anymore. Grief. The kind that never leaves. And suddenly Jordan understands something horrifying. Reyes doesn't expect to survive tonight either. The cavern trembles violently again. Cracks split across the ceiling overhead. Rocks crash into the underground river beside them. Somewhere deeper in the tunnels, men are screaming. Time's running out. Jordan tightens his grip on the pistol. Reyes tightens his thumb over the detonator. Then Sophia whispers 4 tiny words that stop both men cold. "My brother is here." Silence. Jordan slowly turns toward her. "What?" She points deeper into the darkness beyond the cavern, tears streaming down her face now. They took him downstairs, and somewhere far below the mountain, a child screams. The scream echoes up through the cavern again. Small, terrified, human. Every muscle in Jordan's body locks instantly. Sophia clutches his arm with both hands now, shaking so hard she can barely stand. "Mateo," she whispers through tears. They took Mateo. Reyes' expression changes for the first time all night. Confusion. "You kept children down here?" Jordan snaps. "I didn't." Reyes looks genuinely unsettled now, eyes narrowing toward the lower tunnels disappearing beneath the cavern. Those levels were sealed. Another scream rises from below. Then gunfire. Short bursts. Automatic weapons. Someone else is down there. The mountain trembles violently again, dust raining from the ceiling as distant helicopters thunder overhead outside. Jordan hears muffled explosions somewhere near the estate ruins, federal forces closing in fast. But beneath the mountain, something worse is happening. Reyes slowly lowers the detonator halfway, listening, and suddenly the radio equipment behind them crackles alive with panicked voices. "Repeat, Unidentified hostiles breached lower storage. They're killing everyone. Oh, God! A burst of static cuts the transmission short. Jordan sees it hit Reyes immediately. Real fear, not for himself, for his men. What's in the lower tunnels? Jordan demands. Reyes stays silent too long. That's answer enough. Jordan steps closer, pistol raised. What the hell is down there? Finally, Reyes exhales heavily. Trafficking routes. Shame creeps into his voice like poison. Prisoners waiting transport across the border. Jordan feels sick. Children. Families. People hidden beneath this mountain like cargo. Sophia suddenly yanks his sleeve desperately. Please. Another explosion rocks the cavern. Cracks split wider overhead now, chunks of stone crashing into the river. They're running out of time fast. Jordan looks at Reyes. The cartel boss looks back at him with hollow eyes. And for one horrible second, neither man feels like enemies anymore. Just exhausted soldiers standing in the ruins of every terrible choice they ever made. Then Reyes speaks quietly. There's another way out below the tunnels. Jordan's eyes narrow. You expect me to trust you? No. Reyes grips his bleeding shoulder painfully. But if those men reach the prisoners first, nobody leaves alive. Gunfire erupts again beneath them. Closer now. Jordan makes his decision instantly. Move. They descend deeper underground together. The tunnel below the cavern feels older than the others, carved straight through wet black stone. Emergency lights flicker overhead, casting red shadows across the walls while screams echo through the darkness ahead. Sophia stays close behind Jordan, her tiny hand locked around his sleeve. Reyes leads them quickly despite the blood loss. The lower storage connects to old mining shafts, he says breathlessly. If the Federals collapse the upper tunnels, it becomes a grave. Jordan keeps the pistol aimed near Reyes' back anyway. Trust doesn't come that easily. The smell reaches them first. Blood, smoke, burned metal. Then they round the final corner. Bodies everywhere. Cartel soldiers litter the corridor ahead beside shattered cages and open transport containers. Some shot, some butchered. One man hangs pinned against the wall with a combat knife buried through his throat. Not Federal tactics. Too brutal. Jordan kneels beside one corpse and feels his stomach tighten again. Professional kill shots. Military precision. Then he notices the patch torn halfway off the dead man's sleeve. A black wolf insignia. Reyes sees it too. His face drains of color instantly. No, you know them? Jordan asks sharply. Before Reyes can answer, footsteps echo from the darkness ahead. Heavy, calm, unhurried. A man steps into the corridor carrying an assault rifle fitted with a suppressor. Tall, broad shoulders. Gray streaks through his beard. His tactical gear looks old but immaculate, and Jordan's blood freezes solid, because he knows that face. Colonel Marcus Vale, his former commanding officer, the man who ordered the San Tomas raid. Vale smiles faintly when he sees Jordan. Took you long enough. Jordan can barely breathe. You're dead. More armed men emerge silently behind Vale now, all wearing the same Black Wolf insignia. Mercenaries. Ex-Special Forces. Ghosts officially buried years ago. Reyes steps backward slowly, stunned. You sold us out. Vale barely glances at him. Business arrangement expired. Everything crashes together inside Jordan's mind now. The massacre, the tunnel routes, the Federal assault above. None of it was coincidence. Vale orchestrated all of it. Clean the cartel operation. Eliminate Reyes. Erase witnesses. Recover whatever was hidden beneath the mountain. And Jordan walked straight into it. Vale notices the realization hit him. You always were smart, Captain. His eyes drift briefly towards Sophia. Shame you survived San Tomas. Could saved everyone trouble. Jordan's hands tighten around the pistol so hard his knuckles ache. You murdered those civilians. Vale shrugs slightly. Collateral creates leverage. Rise suddenly laughs once. Bitter, broken. You see now, he says quietly to Jordan, your monsters wear uniforms too. Gunfire erupts behind them instantly. One of Vale's mercenaries drops dead as Reyes snatches a fallen rifle and fires wildly down the corridor. Chaos explodes again underground. Jordan grabs Sophia and dives behind overturned cages while bullets shred concrete overhead. Vale's men advance calmly through the smoke, hunters closing in. And somewhere deeper in the darkness below the mountain, children are still screaming. Bullets rip through the underground corridor so fast the air itself seems to scream. Jordan shoves Sophia behind a collapsed steel cage as concrete explodes above them in gray dust clouds. Reyes fires beside him with terrifying precision, despite the blood soaking through his shoulder. Every shot drops another mercenary, years of violence etched into muscle memory. But Vale's men keep coming, calm, disciplined, silent. That's what scares Jordan most. These aren't cartel killers chasing money or revenge. These are trained soldiers erasing loose ends, the kind Jordan once fought beside, the kind he used to become. "Left side," Reyes shouts. Jordan spins and fires instantly as two mercenaries emerge through the smoke. One drops. The other vanishes behind cover. Return fire sparks against the metal cage inches from Sophia's face. She clamps both hands over her ears, trembling violently now. Then Jordan hears it again. Children crying deeper in the tunnels. Dozens this time. Rage floods through him so suddenly it almost feels clean. Vale steps through the smoke ahead like he owns the battlefield, rifle hanging low in his hands. Bullets fly around him while his expression never changes. "You know why San Tomas happened, Jordan?" he calls out calmly. "Because people like Reyes only understand fear. You slaughtered civilians." Vale laughs, cold, empty, and yet here you are fighting beside him. That hits harder than Jordan expects. Because it's true. Reyes reloads beside him roughly. Don't listen to him. But Jordan already remembers too much. Burning homes. False intel. Children caught between gunfire while Vale ordered the operation forward anyway. Jordan buried those memories for years because soldiers survive by obeying, by compartmentalizing, by pretending nightmares are duty. Now all of it crawls back into the light. Another mercenary rounds the corridor corner. Reyes kills him instantly. Then everything shakes. A massive explosion tears through the upper tunnels overhead, the entire mountain roaring like an animal in pain. Lights burst. Darkness swallows the corridor except for flickering emergency reds. Stone crashes down behind Vale's squad, cutting off half his men in collapsing debris. Screaming erupts everywhere. Jordan grabs Sophia immediately. "Move!" They sprint deeper underground while the tunnel collapses behind them in thunderous waves. Reyes limps beside them, breathing hard now, blood loss slowing him badly. Dust fills the air so thick Jordan can barely see. Then they reach the holding chambers. Jordan stops dead. Cages line the enormous underground room, wall to wall. Families packed inside them. Children clinging to terrified mothers. Injured migrants. Shackled prisoners. Human beings stacked beneath the mountain like forgotten cargo. And the mercenaries are executing them. Short controlled bursts. One cage at a time. Jordan's vision tunnels instantly. No. Vale's remaining soldiers move methodically through the chamber, shooting anyone left alive. No panic, no hesitation, just cleanup. A little boy pounds desperately against cage bars while his mother bleeds beside him. Jordan opens fire with a roar. Everything becomes violence. He tears through the chamber like a man possessed, firing until rifles click empty, grabbing weapons from fallen mercenaries without stopping. Reyes joins him from the opposite side, dropping shooters one after another while prisoners scream and scatter through opened cages. Vale's men finally begin falling back. Not retreating, positioning. Jordan realizes it too late. Down! A grenade lands between the cages. The explosion hurls Jordan across the chamber violently. His ears ring. Smoke fills everything. He tastes blood instantly. Somewhere nearby, Sophia screams his name. Jordan forces himself upright and sees Reyes collapsed beneath twisted metal debris. Pinned, Vale emerges slowly through the smoke ahead, carrying a pistol now, the Black Wolf insignia visible across his chest armor. Only two mercenaries remain beside him. Bodies cover the chamber floor. Prisoners huddle crying in corners. Jordan tries lifting his rifle, empty. Vale notices. "That's the problem with good men," he says quietly. Eventually, they run out of ammunition. He raises the pistol towards Sophia. Jordan moves without thinking, but Reyes moves first. With a scream of pure fury, Reyes tears himself free from the debris despite the metal lodged through his side. Blood pours down his body as he charges across the chamber and slams into Vale before the shot fires. Both men crash violently into the cages. Gunshots erupt point blank. Jordan tackles Sophia behind cover as prisoners scatter wildly through the smoke-filled room. Vale and Reyes fight like animals near the collapsing cages, years of hatred exploding all at once beneath the dying mountain. Then Vale drives a knife deep into Reyes' stomach. Silence. Reyes staggers backward slowly, shock spreading across his face. Vale pulls the blade free. Jordan sees death hit Reyes instantly, but instead of falling, Reyes starts laughing, weak, broken, honest. Then Jordan notices the detonator still clutched tightly in Reyes's bloody hand. Vale sees it too. And for the first time all night, the colonel looks afraid. Reyes lifts his eyes toward Jordan one final time. "Take the children," he whispers. His thumb presses down. The mountain explodes. The explosion tears the mountain apart. Fire rips through the holding chamber in a blinding wave, throwing Jordan backward while steel cages twist like paper around him. The ground splits open. Concrete crashes from the ceiling. Screaming fills the darkness. Then everything disappears beneath roaring dust. For several seconds, Jordan can't hear anything except a high ringing buried deep inside his skull. He coughs violently, dragging himself across shattered stone while smoke rolls through the collapsing tunnels. Sophia! No answer. Panic hits instantly. Jordan forces himself up despite pain exploding through his ribs. The entire underground chamber is dying around him now. Fires spread through broken fuel lines. Survivors crawl through debris searching for loved ones. Somewhere nearby, children cry beneath fallen concrete. Then he sees her. Sophia trapped beneath a collapsed cage door. Jordan rushes over, ignoring the agony tearing through his body, and lifts the twisted metal enough for her to crawl free. She throws herself into his arms immediately. "I thought you died. Not today." But even as he says it, Jordan knows the mountain won't hold much longer. A groan echoes through the chamber. Massive, deep, structural collapse. "Come on." He grabs Sophia's hand and starts moving survivors toward the lower escape tunnels Reyes mentioned earlier. Mothers carrying injured children. Prisoners limping through smoke. Terrified people following Jordan because somebody has to lead them out. Because Reyes chose him to. That realization hurts worse than the broken ribs. They reach the lower mining shaft just as another collapse seals the chamber behind them forever. Dust explodes through the tunnel entrance like a storm cloud. The survivors scream and push forward harder into the darkness. Jordan keeps counting heads automatically. Military instinct. 23 survivors. No sign of Vale. Good. Or maybe not. The mining shaft climbs steeply upward through ancient rock, barely wide enough for people to squeeze through single file. Emergency lights flicker weakly overhead. Every few seconds, the mountain shakes again, showering dirt across their shoulders. Sophia stays close beside him silently now. Then a voice echoes from behind them. "Jordan!" He freezes instantly. Vale emerges from the smoke-covered tunnel, limping badly, blood soaking one leg. Half his face is burned from the explosion, but the pistol in his hand remains steady. Alive. Of course he's alive. The survivors panic immediately, pulling children behind them. Vale barely notices them. His eyes stay locked on Jordan. "You think saving a few people changes what you are?" Jordan slowly steps forward. "Maybe not. You followed my orders for years. I know, and you'll carry that forever." Jordan says nothing because there's nothing to deny. San Tomas, the border raids, black operations buried beneath flags and classified reports. He helped create men like Reyes. Maybe that truth never goes away. But then Sophia's small hand slips into his again, and something shifts. Not forgiveness, not redemption. Choice. Vale raises the pistol fully now. "Soldiers like us don't retire, son. We become ghosts." Jordan notices the unstable tunnel ceiling above Vale, cracks spreading wider with every tremor. One chance. He lowers his weapon completely. Vale smiles faintly. "There you are." Then Jordan fires anyway. Not at Vale, at the ceiling. The bullet strikes weakened rock overhead, and the tunnel instantly collapses with a thunderous roar. Tons of stone crash between them violently. Dust explodes through the shaft while survivors scream and shield themselves. When the noise finally settles, Vale is gone, buried beneath the mountain forever. Silence follows. Real silence this time. Jordan stares at the collapsed tunnel, breathing hard while distant sirens echo faintly from the surface above. Morning light spills weakly through cracks farther up the mining shaft. Dawn. The survivors slowly continue climbing toward it. Jordan follows last. Hours later, rescue helicopters circle above the shattered remains of the estate, while federal troops swarm the mountainside. Reporters shout questions behind barricades. Ambulances carry survivors away beneath flashing lights. Nobody notices Jordan sitting alone near the ridge overlooking the valley. Except Sophia. She walks over quietly wrapped in a rescue blanket and sits beside him without speaking. Below them, smoke rises from the ruined mountain where hundreds died, carrying secrets that will probably never reach the news. "You knew him," she says softly after a while. Jordan looks toward the horizon. "Which one? The man who helped us." "Rise." Jordan thinks about the cartel leaders standing in the firelight beneath the mountain. A grieving brother, a murderer, a monster, a victim, human. "Yeah," Jordan answers finally. "I think I did." Sophia leans her head against Zal's arm. What happens now? The sun finally breaks over the mountains, washing the valley gold. Jordan watches rescue teams pulling survivors from the wreckage below while helicopters thunder across the brightening sky. For the first time in years, the weight inside his chest feels slightly lighter. Not gone, never gone, but lighter. He looks down at Sophia and manages the smallest smile. "Now," he says quietly, "we live." Justin Chadwick has always directed like a man fascinated by pressure. Go back to Justin Chadwick's earlier work, whether it was The Political Weight of Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, or the restrained emotional tension of The Other Boleyn Girl, and you see the same pattern repeating. Characters cornered by history. People forced into impossible decisions while the world closes around them. That obsession becomes the heartbeat of Brothers Under Fire, a lean, brutal action thriller that strips military heroism down to something rawer and uglier. No superhero gloss, no invincible warrior fantasy, just exhausted soldiers trapped in a nightmare spiraling out of control. And honestly, that grounded approach is what separates this movie from the endless pile of interchangeable streaming-era action films flooding the market right now. The project actually began under a completely different title, Sierra Madre. That original name carried a more mythic, almost Western flavor, hinting at landscapes and survival rather than direct combat. Somewhere during production and release planning, the title shifted to Brothers Under Fire, and the new name tells you exactly what kind of movie this wants to be. Brotherhood. Loyalty. Violence closing in from every side. Cleaner marketing? Sure, but also a thematic statement. Because beneath the cartel shootouts and military tactics, this movie keeps circling one idea over and over again. What happens when soldiers trained for war suddenly lose the structure that gives their violence purpose? And Chadwick was an unexpectedly smart choice to direct it. Most filmmakers approaching this material would lean hard into testosterone spectacle. Explosions every 10 minutes, slow-motion gunfire, dialogue written entirely in grunts. Chadwick goes the opposite direction. His camera lingers on fatigue, fear, confusion. Even in the trailer, the emphasis isn't on domination, it's on survival. Watch the way scenes are framed. Dusty roads stretching endlessly. Tight interiors where bodies feel trapped inside the frame. Faces carrying the 1,000-yard stare before the bullets even start flying. That visual language matters because it immediately tells the audience this isn't John Wick with soldiers. This is closer to siege cinema, men psychologically unraveling under sustained pressure. Then there's Kiefer Sutherland, perfect casting for this kind of material. Not because he looks invincible anymore. Actually, the opposite. Age becomes part of the movie's texture. Sutherland has spent decades playing men who survive through stubbornness more than strength, and that energy hangs over Captain Jordan Wright before he even speaks. The film reportedly follows Wright and his squad while attending a wedding in Mexico before colliding with a cartel nightmare that escalates into open warfare. On paper, that premise sounds almost absurdly simple. Soldiers versus cartel. We've seen it before. But Chadwick's vision seems less interested in action choreography than emotional erosion. How quickly does camaraderie collapse under terror? How long before military discipline becomes desperation? And here's the thing. The movie arrives during a fascinating moment for action cinema. For years, the genre has drifted toward hyper-stylization, neon lighting, comic book physics, assassins dressed like fashion models. Audiences love that stuff, obviously. But there's also growing hunger for something rougher and more tactile again. Films where dirt matters. Blood looks ugly instead of aesthetic. Brothers Under Fire seems built directly around that instinct. Even the production setup reflects it. Shooting reportedly took place in Colombia, which gives the environments an actual physical texture most green screen heavy productions can't replicate. Roads feel sunburned, buildings look lived in, air feels heavy. You can almost smell sweat and dust through the screen. The screenplay comes from Ian Mackenzie Jeffers and Delbert Hancock, and that pairing is fascinating once you look closer. Jeffers previously wrote The Grey, one of the most emotionally stripped-down survival thrillers of the last 15 years. That film understood something many action movies forget. Physical danger becomes compelling only when emotional collapse sits underneath it. Wolves were never really the point in The Grey. Mortality was, regret was, the fear of disappearing without meaning anything. Bringing Jeffers into Brothers Under Fire instantly suggests this movie wants more than bullets and body counts. It wants existential pressure, men confronting themselves while trapped in violence. You can already see traces of that philosophy in the film's setup. These soldiers aren't entering battle intentionally. They're off duty, relaxed, celebrating a wedding. Then chaos detonates around them. That shift matters psychologically because the movie weaponizes vulnerability. Combat zones are one thing, unexpected violence is another. Chadwick seems deeply interested in the transition point. The exact second trained professionals stop operating strategically and start operating emotionally. Panic changes people. Grief changes people faster. The death of a squad member reportedly becomes the trigger that transforms the story from escape thriller into revenge-fueled survival war. And suddenly the title makes even more sense. Brotherhood becomes both strength and curse. Visually, the movie also appears committed to old-school action storytelling. Not nostalgic in a cheesy throwback way. More like grounded mid-budget thrillers from the late 1990s and early 2000s, where geography mattered during action scenes. You understood where characters were. You felt terrain-shaping conflict. That style has become strangely rare now because modern editing often cuts so fast spatial logic disappears entirely. But Chadwick's instincts lean patient, observational. Even his historical dramas use silence carefully, allowing tension to build through framing instead of non-stop movement. If that discipline carries into the final film, Brothers Under Fire could end up feeling refreshingly physical compared to the digital chaos dominating contemporary action filmmaking. And maybe that's the biggest reason the project feels intriguing. Nobody involved seems interested in making disposable content. The cast includes rising performers like Ashton Sanders, alongside veterans carrying decades of cinematic history, while the production itself balances gritty realism with survival thriller intensity. You can sense filmmakers trying to resurrect a type of action movie Hollywood nearly abandoned, the kind driven less by mythology and more by exhaustion, fear, and human fracture under pressure. Whether the film fully succeeds or not is another conversation entirely. But the ambition is there. You feel it immediately, because once the director's vision locks into place, everything else has to support it. The script, the structure, the way dialogue reveals character under stress. And that's where this story gets even more interesting, because the screenplay behind Brothers Under Fire went through a creative evolution that completely reshaped the kind of movie audiences we're ultimately going to get. The screenplay of Brothers Under Fire is built on a brutal little switch. Take men trained for combat, remove them from the battlefield, then throw war back at them when they are least prepared for it. That is the hook. Captain Jordan Wright and his squad are not entering Mexico as operators on mission. They are arriving for a wedding, for leave, for one fragile moment where uniforms are supposed to stop mattering. Then the cartel violence erupts, and suddenly celebration becomes survival. Simple premise, sharp premise. The kind of premise that works because it doesn't need 15 layers of mythology to move. Ian Mackenzie Jeffers and Delbert Hancock structure the story around escalation rather than complication. Jeffers' fingerprints matter here, because his earlier work on The Grey understood survival as more than physical endurance. It was men facing death while trying not to collapse spiritually. Brothers Under Fire appears to chase that same pulse. The enemy is external, yes, but the real tension comes from watching trained soldiers lose control of the situation piece by piece. First, they react, then they retreat, then grief hardens into retaliation. That is not a complicated arc, but it is an emotionally efficient one. What makes the setup effective is the wedding itself. Weddings in movies usually symbolize unity, family, future, peace. Here, that symbolism gets violently corrupted. The script uses the event almost like a trapdoor. 1 minute, these characters are surrounded by ritual and belonging. The next, they are thrown into chaos where every bond is tested under fire. That contrast gives the story its emotional engine. Violence does not interrupt a mission. It interrupts intimacy. That difference matters because the attack feels personal before it becomes tactical. The title change from Sierra Madre to Brothers Under Fire also tells us something about the screenplay's focus. Sierra Madre sounds geographic, mysterious, almost mythic. Brothers Under Fire is blunt, emotional. Markable, sure, but also clearer about what the movie is selling. Brotherhood under pressure. The story is not really asking whether these soldiers can shoot better than cartel gunmen. Of course they can. The real question is whether loyalty becomes salvation or a curse when every decision costs someone blood. The screenplay also seems designed around Kiefer Sutherland's screen identity. Jordan Wright is not written like a young action hero trying to prove himself. He feels like a man carrying experience, guilt, and the awful knowledge that survival often requires ugly choices. That gives the writing a useful shortcut. The audience brings decades of Sutherland associations into the film: command, urgency, exhaustion, moral pressure, and the script can use that history without over-explaining him. Smart writing sometimes means knowing what the actor already brings into the room. Where the script risks familiarity is in the cartel thriller framework. Soldiers versus cartel is not new territory. We have seen versions of this conflict across action films, television, and borderland thrillers for years. The danger is cliché: faceless villains, revenge mechanics, moral simplicity. But Brothers Under Fire seems to avoid total flatness by keeping the emotional lens tight. It is less interested in explaining the cartel world and more interested in what happens to this squad once violence strips away ceremony, rank, and illusion. That tightness can be both strength and weakness. At 101 minutes, the film does not appear built for sprawling political depth or slow-burn world building. It wants momentum. It wants pressure. That means character development has to happen through action. Who freezes? Who follows orders? Who breaks formation? Who chooses revenge over rescue? In a survival thriller, dialogue is rarely the deepest writing tool. Behavior is. A man's character shows in the half-second before he pulls the trigger, or the moment he decides who gets left behind. And here's where the screenplay's best idea lives. Military training does not erase human emotion. It only delays the collapse. These men know tactics, weapons, movement, extraction. But grief does not care about training. Panic does not salute rank. The more the situation deteriorates, the more the script can expose the gap between professional discipline and personal rage. That is where action writing becomes drama. Not in the gunfire itself, but in the choice behind the gunfire. The script's lean design also fits Justin Chadwick's direction. Chadwick is not naturally a maximalist filmmaker. He tends to care about pressure inside faces, not just movement across landscapes. So a screenplay built around contained emotional escalation gives him something useful to work with. The writing does not need to reinvent the action genre. It needs to create enough human friction that every chase, ambush, and standoff feels like it is damaging the characters from the inside. So the screenplay of Brothers Under Fire works best as a pressure chamber. It takes brotherhood, celebration, military discipline, revenge, and survival, then compresses them into one violent chain reaction. Maybe it is not trying to be subtle. Maybe it does not need to be. Some thrillers are built like puzzles. This one is built like a fuse. Once it is lit, the question is not where the story is going. The question is who will still be standing when it burns out. And once that fuse is burning, everything depends on the people holding it. The writing gives the characters their battlefield, but casting decides whether we believe the fear, loyalty, and rage inside it. Casting Brothers Under Fire around Kiefer Sutherland is not just a commercial decision. It is a shortcut into audience memory. The second Sutherland appears as Captain Jordan Wright, the film inherits decades of viewer association. Crisis management, sleepless urgency, damaged authority. Men who keep moving because stopping would mean feeling everything. That history matters. A younger action star might sell physical dominance. Sutherland sells burden. He looks like someone who has already survived too many bad nights, which makes him exactly the kind of leader this story needs. Jordan Wright is not designed as a glossy action fantasy. He is the older soldier at the center of a nightmare, the man everyone looks toward when panic starts eating through the group. That casting choice immediately changes the movie's emotional temperature. Sutherland does not need to bark every command like a trailer moment. His face already carries command. The tension comes from watching whether that command can survive grief, shock, and guilt. That is far more interesting than watching a perfect warrior stay perfect. Then, the ensemble widens, and this is where the casting becomes more textured than the premise first suggests. Ashton Sanders brings a completely different energy into the film. Audiences who know him from Moonlight know he can play silence like a wound. He has a stillness that does not feel empty. It feels loaded. In a movie about soldiers under pressure, that quality is valuable because not every performance should be loud. Some men explode. Some go quiet. Sanders is built for the second kind of damage. Omar Chaparro is another smart presence because he prevents the film from becoming a one-note American military bubble. Chaparro has worked across comedy, drama, and mainstream international projects, and that range gives him flexibility inside a cartel survival thriller. In the wrong hands, supporting characters in this kind of story become functions. Guide, victim, local contact, villain, survivor. Casting someone with Chaparro's screen warmth gives the movie a better chance at human texture. He can bring personality into scenes that might otherwise exist only to move the plot forward. Laura Osma's casting also matters because the wedding setup needs emotional credibility before violence destroys it. If the celebration feels fake, the tragedy feels mechanical. Ozma, along with the surrounding ensemble, helps create the sense that these people had lives before the gunfire arrived. That may sound basic, but action movies often fail right there. They rush the human setup because they are impatient for bullets. Brothers Under Fire needs us to believe in the room before it tears the room apart. Solly McLeod and Tommy Martinez add younger physical energy around Sutherland's veteran gravity. That contrast is useful. A squad should not feel like copies of the same man with different haircuts. It should feel like a pressure system. Experience, impulse, fear, loyalty, ego, confusion. McLeod and Martinez help sell the idea of younger soldiers still defining themselves inside chaos, while Sutherland's Wright feels like someone already defined by past violence. The generational contrast gives the ensemble a natural rhythm. What is especially interesting is that this is not a giant star vehicle in the old-school sense. Yes, Sutherland leads it, but the casting strategy seems closer to sturdy mid-budget action filmmaking. One recognizable anchor, several rising or internationally familiar faces, and enough ensemble variety to make the survival mechanics feel populated. That kind of casting can be stronger than overloading a film with celebrities. Too many famous faces can make danger feel artificial. Here, the balance lets Sutherland carry authority while the rest of the cast keeps the world from shrinking around him. And the Colombia production context adds another layer. Because the film shot in Colombia and builds its story around Mexico-set cartel violence, casting and atmosphere have to do a lot of credibility work. The audience needs to feel place, culture, and danger without the movie sliding into cheap exoticism. That is a difficult line. The presence of Latin American performers in key roles gives the film at least a foundation for texture beyond generic cartel movie shorthand. Whether the writing fully honors that texture is another question, but the casting gives it a fighting chance. The casting director's job in a film like this is less about surprise and more about balance. You need faces that can register fear quickly, bodies that seem believable in motion, voices that can carry command, panic, anger, and exhaustion without turning every scene into melodrama. That is harder than it sounds. Bad action casting kills tension because you never believe the group as a unit. Good action casting makes you understand relationships before the script explains them. A glance becomes history. A hesitation becomes conflict. Sutherland's presence ultimately sets the emotional rule for everyone else. This is not playful action. This is action with weight in its joints. Sanders brings interior ache. Chaparro brings lived-in warmth. Ozma brings emotional grounding. McLeod and Martinez bring the volatility of younger men thrown into violence they thought they understood. Together, they give Brothers Under Fire the ingredients it needs for ensemble tension, even before performance details fully reveal themselves on screen, because casting only opens the door. The real test comes once the camera gets close, once fear hits the eyes, once grief tightens the jaw, once every actor has to prove that these characters are more than soldiers with weapons. That is where performance stops being casting theory and becomes the thing the audience actually feels. Kiefer Sutherland's performance in Brothers Under Fire works because he does not play Captain Jordan Wright like a man chasing glory. He plays him like a man trying to prevent collapse. That distinction matters. A weaker version of this movie would turn Wright into a gravel-voiced action machine, barking orders and mowing down enemies with impossible precision. Sutherland gives him something heavier: weariness, command under pressure. The look of someone who knows every decision he makes may become a ghost that follows him home. What Sutherland understands better than most actors in this lane is urgency without panic. He can make stillness feel tactical. When Wright listens, you feel him calculating distance, threat, loss, and consequence all at once. That is the kind of screen presence action thrillers desperately need. Not constant motion, controlled pressure. His best weapon is not the gun in his hand. It is the sense that his mind keeps moving even when the situation is falling apart around him. And then grief enters the performance. That is where Wright becomes more than a commanding officer. The death of a squad member does not simply motivate the plot. It cracks the military shell around him. Sutherland is strongest in that emotional middle zone where rage has not exploded yet, but is already poisoning judgment. You can see the battle happening internally: leader versus mourner, soldier versus friend, survival instinct versus revenge instinct. That conflict gives the film its human voltage. Ashton Sanders brings the opposite rhythm, and that contrast is crucial. Sanders has always been an actor of pauses. He does not need to dominate a scene to haunt it. In Brothers Under Fire, his value comes from interiority, the sense that trauma is being absorbed before it is expressed. Around Sutherland's hardened authority, Sanders' quieter energy gives the squad emotional dimension. He makes silence feel active. Watching him process fear or loss is like watching a fuse burn behind the eyes. That kind of performance is easy to underrate because it does not announce itself. No grand speech, no obvious awards clip. Just tension sitting under the skin. But in a survival thriller, that restraint can be more powerful than shouting. When everyone is surrounded by gunfire, the actor who pulls inward creates a different kind of danger. You start wondering what happens when that restraint finally breaks. And that question keeps scenes alive. Omar Chaparro's contribution appears to operate through warmth and human accessibility. In a film this violent, warmth is not decoration, it is oxygen. Chaparro gives the audience something to hold on to before the story becomes a pressure chamber. His presence helps prevent the cartel thriller setting from becoming purely mechanical. Every action movie needs at least one performer who reminds us that the world was normal before it became hell. Without that, violence has no contrast. It is just noise. Laura Ozma's work carries a similar burden from another angle. The wedding setup depends on emotional credibility, and Ozma helps ground the civilian side of the story. Her role matters because the film's violence is not abstract. It invades a space of family, intimacy, and celebration. When an actor can make that world feel real quickly, the destruction lands harder. The audience does not need endless backstory. They need one believable face reacting like a life has been ripped open. Solly McLeod and Tommy Martinez bring kinetic volatility to the squad dynamic. Younger performers in military thrillers often get trapped in one-note toughness, but the more interesting angle is uncertainty. Young soldiers can be trained and still terrified, brave and still reckless, loyal and still wrong. That tension gives their performances room to breathe. Around Sutherland's weathered control, their energy creates friction. The squad feels less like a perfect machine and more like a group of men trying to remember their training while emotion starts rewriting the rules. The strongest acting in this kind of film usually happens in reaction shots. Someone hears a command and hesitates half a second too long. Someone looks at a body and stops being a soldier for one breath. Someone fires not because it is tactically correct, but because grief has taken the wheel. That is where Brothers Under Fire needs its cast most. Not in heroic poses, in the small fractures between orders. What makes the lead performances promising is the way they seem built around emotional temperature rather than spectacle. Sutherland runs hot beneath the surface. Sanders runs quiet until the silence becomes unbearable. Chaparro and Ozma help establish the human cost. McLeod and Martinez give the squad younger blood, faster nerves, less emotional armor. Together, they create the possibility of action that actually hurts. And that is the key. Action only matters when faces matter. Bullets are choreography. Explosions are punctuation. But an actor's eyes can turn a standard firefight into a moral event. Sutherland knows this. Sanders knows this. The ensemble around them gives the film enough emotional variation that the violence does not have to carry meaning alone. Because once the leads establish the pain at the center, the surrounding cast has to widen that pain into a full world. A survival thriller cannot live on one commander alone. It needs civilians, allies, enemies, witnesses, and victims. People who make the conflict feel larger than a squad trapped in hostile terrain. The supporting cast in Brothers Under Fire has one major job. Make the violence feel like it is happening to a world, not just to a squad. That is where many military thrillers stumble. They build a lead hero, give him a mission, then surround him with people who exist only to die, panic, or explain the next location. But this story begins at a wedding, and that changes the equation. A wedding is community. Families, friends, history in the room. If those people feel thin, the entire emotional setup collapses. Omar Chaparro becomes important because he can bring humanity into scenes that might otherwise lean too hard into function. He has the kind of screen presence that feels approachable, even when the genre around him gets violent. In an action thriller, that quality is gold. Not every supporting character should look like they were carved out of tactical gear. Some should feel like they had breakfast plans, family problems, bad jokes, ordinary lives. Chaparro helps suggest that ordinary world before it gets torn open. Laura Ozma carries a similar kind of grounding. Her presence helps the wedding setting feel emotionally specific instead of decorative. Because the film's nightmare only works if the pre-nightmare has texture. You need laughter before gunfire, touch before blood. A room full of people who are not thinking about survival until survival becomes the only thing left. Ozma's role gives the story that civilian pulse, reminding us that trained soldiers are not the only people paying the price. Then there is the squad itself. The ensemble dynamic needs friction, not just loyalty. Soldiers who agree on everything are boring. Soldiers under pressure should reveal different instincts. One follows orders, one questions them, one panics quietly, one gets reckless, one mistakes revenge for courage. That is where performers like Solly McLeod and Tommy Martinez become useful. They bring younger energy into the group, and younger energy means speed, pride, fear, and volatility. Around Sutherland's weathered command, that contrast matters. A good ensemble in this kind of film should feel like a chain. Strong in theory, vulnerable at every link. The story's tension comes from watching which link bends first. Supporting actors carry that burden through tiny choices. A glance before obeying an order, a breath held too long, a flash of resentment when Wright makes the hard call. These are not decorative beats. They are how the audience understands group psychology without needing speeches about brotherhood. The cartel side of the story faces a harder challenge. Villains in cartel thrillers often become faceless brutality, a wall of guns and menace with no real personality. Sometimes that works. Anonymity can be terrifying. But if every antagonist feels interchangeable, the danger becomes generic. Brothers Under Fire needs its opposing force to feel organized, unpredictable, and human enough to scare us. The best threat is not just violent. It is intelligent. It adapts. It watches. It forces the heroes to realize training does not guarantee control. The ensemble also has to sell geography. That sounds strange, but it matters. In survival thrillers, supporting characters often become the audience's map. Someone knows the road. Someone knows the town. Someone understands the danger before the outsiders do. If those roles are played flatly, the environment feels like a backdrop. Played well, the location becomes a character itself. The people around Wright's squad should make the terrain feel lived in, not borrowed for an action sequence. What gives the cast its best potential is contrast. Sutherland brings burden, Sanders brings stillness, Chaparro brings warmth, Ozma brings emotional stakes. McLeod and Martinez bring volatility. Each energy serves a different function, and together they can keep the movie from becoming one long masculine growl. That variety matters because real panic does not sound the same coming from everyone. Some people shout, some freeze, some perform courage because they are terrified of being seen as afraid. The ensemble's real test is whether we remember them after the gunfire stops. Not every supporting character needs a full arc, but each one needs a reason to exist beyond plot mechanics. A face, a rhythm, a moment that belongs only to them. The strongest action films understand this. Aliens works because the Marines are distinct. Black Hawk Down works because KSOS still has human fragments inside it. Brothers Under Fire aims for that same principle on a smaller, grittier scale. And when the supporting cast does its job, the central theme becomes sharper. Brotherhood is not just about soldiers. It is about chosen loyalty colliding with blood ties, friendship, marriage, community, and survival. The wedding party and the squad mirror each other. Two groups built on trust, both shattered by violence. That is the deeper ensemble function. They widen the meaning of the title. Because once the people feel real, the physical world around them has to feel just as real. Dust, roads, rooms, weapons, clothing, architecture. Every visual detail must convince us that this nightmare has weight, heat, and texture. The physical world of Brothers Under Fire needs to do something deceptively difficult. Make danger feel hot, dusty, cramped, and inescapable. This is not a movie that can survive on clean digital backdrops or generic warehouses pretending to be menace. The story needs texture, roads that feel exposed, rooms that feel too small, courtyards where celebration can turn into a kill zone in seconds. Production design in a thriller like this is not decoration. It is pressure. The wedding setting is the smartest visual contrast in the film's design language. Before violence arrives, the environment should carry warmth, fabric, flowers, music, crowded tables, dress clothes, ordinary human softness. Then gunfire invades that space, and suddenly every beautiful detail becomes vulnerable. White shirts stain, decorations tear, chairs become cover. A place built for unity becomes a battlefield. That transformation is the design doing story work without needing dialogue. Shooting in Colombia gives the film a tactile advantage. Real locations carry imperfections that sets often struggle to fake. Uneven walls, sun-bleached streets, dust gathered in corners, the way light bounces off old plaster and rough ground. Those details matter because the movie's realism depends on physical credibility. When characters run, hide, bleed, and fight, the world around them has to push back. Smooth surfaces would betray the tone. This needs abrasion. Costume design also has a quiet but important function. The soldiers begin outside the usual combat frame, which means clothing can show displacement. They are not fully armored mythic warriors at the start. They are men caught between civilian life and military reflex. That visual in-between state gives the action more tension. A tactical uniform announces readiness. Wedding clothes announce exposure. Watching that softness get dragged into violence makes the premise hit harder. Weapons and props need the same grounded philosophy. Nothing should feel fetishized. In some action films, guns are photographed like holy objects. Here, they should feel like tools. Dangerous, heavy, ugly, necessary. The best version of Brothers Under Fire treats weapons not as cool accessories, but as moral accelerants. Every time one appears, the situation becomes less reversible. That is stronger than glamour. Violence should feel costly, not stylish. Color becomes another part of the emotional architecture. The film appears built around dry earth tones, harsh daylight, shadowed interiors, and sunburned exteriors. That palette fits the survival thriller mood because it drains comfort from the frame. Nothing feels lush, nothing feels safe. Even beauty comes with threat. A mountain road can look gorgeous and deadly at the same time. That contradiction is exactly the point. The landscape is not evil, but it is indifferent. The production design also has to guide spatial understanding. In action scenes, geography is everything. Where is the exit? Where is cover? Who is exposed? Who can see whom? Bad design turns firefights into noise. Good design lets the audience feel trapped alongside the characters. A doorway becomes hope. A hallway becomes a funnel. A vehicle becomes shelter until it becomes a coffin. That kind of spatial storytelling separates functional action from chaotic action. Cartel spaces present another visual challenge. The design cannot simply stack cliches. Gold chains? Dark rooms, anonymous henchmen, weapons on tables? We have seen that too many times. The stronger choice is specificity. Offices that look used, safe houses with personal objects, vehicles with wear. Neighborhoods that feel inhabited before violence colonizes them. The more ordinary the spaces feel, the scarier the cartel presence becomes, because evil does not need theatrical lighting to be terrifying. What I appreciate about this visual approach is that it seems committed to weight. Heat has weight. Clothing has weight. Guns have weight. Fear has weight. The world should feel like it presses down on everyone inside it. That is the kind of design that supports Justin Chadwick's strengths as a director. He is not chasing glossy spectacle. He is chasing pressure. Production design becomes the silent collaborator in that pursuit. And the best production design is usually invisible until you imagine the film without it. Remove the dust, the cramped rooms, the sun-beaten roads, the wedding textures, the civilian clothing, the lived-in locations, and the story becomes generic overnight. Keep them, and suddenly the movie has skin. You feel the place. You believe the danger. You understand why escape is not just a plot goal but a physical battle against the environment itself. Because after the world is built, the camera decides how we experience it. The same road can feel open or suffocating depending on lens choice. The same room can feel safe or doomed depending on framing. And in Brothers Under Fire, visual execution is where the film's survival pressure either becomes cinematic or disappears into ordinary action noise. The cinematography of Brothers Under Fire has to solve one essential problem. How do you make familiar action feel immediate again? The answer is not more bullets. It is perspective. A cartel ambush can become generic in seconds if the camera floats above it like an observer. But if the lens stays low, close, and trapped with the characters, suddenly every corner matters. Every blind spot becomes threat. Every open road feels like exposure. This kind of thriller needs visual geography more than visual polish. The audience should understand where people are in relation to danger. Who has cover? Who is cut off? Who can reach the vehicle? Who is trapped behind a doorway with no clean angle? When that geography is clear, tension becomes physical. Your body starts mapping escape routes with the characters. That is where action becomes participation instead of spectacle. Handheld camera work, when used carefully, can give the film its pulse. Not shaky for the sake of chaos. That trick got old years ago. Controlled instability is different. A camera that trembles with movement but still preserves spatial logic can make violence feel human and panicked without turning the screen into soup. The best action cinematography lets you feel confusion while still understanding consequence. Hard balance, essential balance. Lighting matters just as much. Harsh daylight can be more frightening than darkness because there is nowhere to hide. In a sun-baked landscape, danger feels exposed and inevitable. Shadows inside rooms then become psychological traps, not just moody decoration. That contrast, blinding exterior, suffocating interior, fits the story's emotional rhythm. Outside, the squad is vulnerable. Inside, they are cornered. Neither space offers comfort. The visual language around Kiefer Sutherland should lean into compression. Tight frames. Faces boxed by doorways, vehicle windows, walls. Tactical cover. Wright is a leader, but the frame should never let him feel free. That is how cinematography can quietly undermine action hero fantasy. He may command the squad, but the image keeps reminding us that command is not control. The world is closing in faster than he can calculate. For Ashton Sanders, the camera benefits from patience. Sanders is an actor whose power often lives in micro-expression, so cutting away too quickly would waste him. Hold on the face. Let the silence thicken. Let the audience search his eyes before the scene tells us what he feels. That kind of visual trust can turn a simple reaction shot into emotional architecture. Sometimes the most violent thing in frame is a person trying not to break. Action coverage also needs rhythm. Wide shots establish danger. Medium shots track decisions. Close-ups reveal cost. Too many close-ups and the scene becomes spatial nonsense. Too many wides and the emotion drains out. The strongest cinematography in a film like this moves between those distances like breathing. Expand, contract, expand, contract. Show the battlefield. Then show what the battlefield is doing to someone's face. Vehicles likely become crucial visual tools. In survival thrillers, cars and trucks are never just transportation. They are cover, escape plan, coffin, weapon, shelter, and trap, sometimes all in the same sequence. Shooting through windshields, side mirrors, cracked glass, and rear windows can fracture the image beautifully. Not beauty for its own sake. Beauty with anxiety inside it. The world becomes sliced into reflections and blind angles. The film's Colombian locations also give the camera scale when needed. Roads, hills, settlements, open terrain. These spaces can make the squad feel small without turning the movie into landscape tourism. That is the trick. The environment should not pause the story to show off. It should make survival feel harder. A wide shot of a road only matters if we understand how far safety is, how exposed the characters are, and how little control they have over what waits ahead. What separates strong technical execution from ordinary coverage is intention. Anybody can point a camera at gunfire. The question is whether the image has a point of view. Does the frame make us feel loyalty tightening, fear spreading, revenge distorting judgment? If the cinematography only records action, it fails. If it interprets action, it gives the movie a nervous system. And that is where Brothers Under Fire has its clearest visual opportunity. The camera should not worship violence. It should survive it. It should duck, hesitate, search, recoil, and sometimes freeze in horrible recognition. That approach would place the viewer inside the squad's unraveling instead of safely outside it. No clean hero mythology, no glossy battlefield poetry, just pressure, dust, impact, breath. Because once the image creates that pressure, sound has to invade the body. Gunfire is not just something you hear. It punches space. Silence is not empty. It waits. And in a survival thriller built on panic, grief, and loyalty under fire, the audio landscape may be the difference between watching danger and feeling it in your chest. Sound in Brothers Under Fire should not behave like decoration. It should behave like impact. In a survival thriller, audio is the invisible hand around the audience's throat, the crack of gunfire, the snap of glass, the ugly silence after someone stops breathing. Music can guide emotion, yes, but sound design does the dirtier work. It makes violence physical. It makes distance measurable. It makes fear arrive before the camera even shows us what is coming. The score needs restraint more than volume. A film like this can easily drown itself in pounding drums and heroic brass, turning every firefight into trailer music. That would be a mistake. The stronger choice is tension through scarcity. Low pulses, thin strings, distant percussion, maybe electronic textures that feel more like nerves than melody. The music should not tell us these men are brave. Their choices can do that. The score should tell us the situation is getting smaller, tighter, less survivable. Gunfire is where the sound team either wins or loses credibility. Movie guns often sound too clean, too designed, too exciting. Here, they need to sound ugly, deafening in closed rooms, flat and terrifying across open terrain. Different weapons should have different personalities, not because the audience needs technical cataloging, but because real danger has texture. A rifle echoing down a narrow street should not feel the same as a handgun blast inside a vehicle. Space changes sound. Good sound design remembers that. Silence may be the most powerful tool available. After an ambush, the absence of noise can hit harder than the attack itself. Ringing ears, labored breathing, someone whispering a name. Fabric rustling as a wounded body is dragged across the floor. That kind of quiet is not empty. It is aftermath. It forces the audience to sit with consequence, instead of racing immediately to the next burst of action. This is where grief enters through the speakers. The wedding sequence offers the richest audio contrast. Before violence, the soundscape should be full. Music, laughter, overlapping conversations, glasses, footsteps, celebration spilling into the air. Then the first shots cut through it. Everything changes. The same music that felt warm seconds earlier becomes eerie if it keeps playing under chaos. A dropped microphone, feedback, a song continuing while people scream. That contrast can make the attack feel genuinely violating because sound preserves the memory of peace while violence destroys it. Voices matter too. Commands during combat can become rhythm, move, down, cover, short words, shouted under stress, stripped of poetry. But the emotional power comes when language breaks down. Someone stops using rank and says a name. Someone repeats an order because panic has blocked comprehension. Someone cannot speak at all. Dialogue under fire should feel damaged by fear. Clean speeches would betray the reality this movie is chasing. Environmental sound can make Colombia's locations feel alive without turning them into postcards. Wind across open roads. Dogs barking somewhere off-screen. Distant vehicles. Insects in the heat. The dull hum of a room before violence enters. These sounds create the sense that the world continues even while the characters' lives are collapsing. That indifference is frightening. Nature does not pause for tragedy. Streets do not mourn. The soundscape keeps breathing. The mix should also understand proximity. When the camera is close to Wright, we should hear his breath, gear movement, maybe the tiny scrape of his hand against a weapon. When the perspective widens, the sound should open up too. Echoes, distant engines, shots bouncing across space. That movement between intimate and exterior audio mirrors the cinematography. Close means body, wide means threat. Together, they create pressure. Ashton Sanders' quieter performance would benefit from audio patience. Let silence sit around him. Let small sounds become enormous. A swallow, a shaky inhale, the shift of boots on concrete. When an actor works through restraint, sound can amplify what the face refuses to say. That is cinema at its most precise. Not explaining emotion, but letting the room reveal it. And if the film uses music during moments of revenge, it has to be careful. Too much heroic scoring risks turning grief into fantasy. Revenge should not feel clean here. It should feel contaminated. The music should carry dread even when the squad seems to regain control, because emotional control and tactical control are not the same thing. A successful counterattack can still feel like a moral failure. The score can whisper that before the script ever admits it. The best audio landscape for Brothers Under Fire is one that attacks, retreats, and haunts. Loud when violence erupts. Quiet when consequence arrives. Sparse when grief takes over. It should make the audience flinch, then make them listen to the emptiness afterward. Because that emptiness is where the film's real damage lives. And once sound has made the nightmare physical, the next layer is the production journey itself. The real locations, logistical strain, and behind-the-scenes choices that shaped how this pressure cooker was brought to life. The production story behind Brothers Under Fire is where the movie's physical identity really begins to matter. This was not the kind of action film that could be built entirely inside climate-controlled sound stages and still keep its teeth. The premise demands heat, distance, dust, uneven terrain, and locations that feel capable of trapping people. That is why the Columbia shoot becomes more than a logistical footnote. It shapes the film's bloodstream. Real places give actors something to fight against. Real sunlight does not flatter. Real ground does not forgive. Originally known as Sierra Madre, the project carried that title's sense of landscape and danger before becoming Brothers Under Fire. That shift says plenty about the film's evolution. Sierra Madre makes you think of place, survival, mountains, harsh terrain. Brothers Under Fire pushes the emotional core forward. Soldiers, loyalty, pressure, violence. Behind the scenes, that kind of title change often reflects marketing, yes, but also identity. The film seems to have moved from a terrain-driven survival title toward a Brotherhood-driven combat title. Shooting an action thriller in real locations creates problems that polished studio filmmaking avoids. Weather changes. Light disappears. Roads become difficult. Equipment has to move through spaces not designed for filmmaking convenience. But that inconvenience can become the movie's greatest gift. Actors behave differently when the environment is physically demanding. Sweat is not sprayed on. Dust is not gently applied by makeup. Exhaustion starts creeping into posture, voice, and breath. The camera catches things performance alone cannot fake. Justin Chadwick's direction benefits from that kind of realism because his work tends to focus on pressure inside people rather than spectacle outside them. A director obsessed with glossy control might fight the environment. Chadwick can use it. If a scene feels too hot, too cramped, too uncomfortable, that discomfort belongs in the frame. The production journey becomes part of the storytelling, the shoot itself echoing the character's struggle to move through hostile space. Action filmmaking also depends heavily on choreography that feels dangerous without becoming reckless. The production has to coordinate gunfire effects, vehicle movement, crowd panic, tactical movement, and actor safety while preserving emotional clarity. That is harder than it looks. A wedding attack sequence, for example, is not just people run while shots fire. It requires geography. Where are civilians? Where is the squad? Where is cover? Where does confusion become strategy? Every extra, every camera position, every sound cue has to support the illusion of sudden chaos. And here's the underrated truth. Chaos in cinema is usually the result of extreme organization. The messier a sequence feels, the more disciplined the behind-the-scenes planning has to be. If the audience feels panic but still understands what is happening, the crew has done its job. If everyone just runs randomly and the camera shakes, that is not realism. That is laziness pretending to be intensity. Brothers Under Fire needs the former, controlled disorder, panic shaped into readable cinema. The cast also would have faced the challenge of making military behavior believable without turning every movement into performance cosplay. Actors playing soldiers must learn how to hold weapons, move as a unit, communicate under threat, and carry themselves with the muscle memory of training. But the trick is not looking perfect. These characters are off-duty when violence erupts. Their responses should feel trained but interrupted by shock. That means preparation had to leave room for messiness. Too clean, and the premise loses fear. Too messy, and they stop feeling like soldiers. Kiefer Sutherland's presence likely helped anchor that production atmosphere. He has spent much of his career inside stories built around urgency, command, and crisis, so the rhythm of high-pressure scenes is familiar territory for him. For younger cast members, working opposite that kind of veteran can sharpen the ensemble. Leadership is not only written into the script, sometimes it appears in the working dynamic. When the lead actor carries authority naturally, the group can respond to it without forcing hierarchy. The Columbia production also gives the film an international texture that matters for a story set around cartel violence and cross-border danger. Of course, location alone does not guarantee authenticity. Films can shoot anywhere and still reduce place to stereotype. But real environments provide a foundation. Streets, landscapes, architecture, and ambient life create visual density. The responsibility then falls on the filmmakers to treat that density with respect rather than using it as exotic wallpaper. Behind the scenes, the biggest creative challenge was probably tonal control. This movie walks a narrow line. Lean too far into revenge fantasy and the grief becomes shallow. Lean too far into realism and the action momentum may drag. Make the cartel threat too faceless and the danger becomes generic. Humanize everything too much and the thriller engine slows. Chadwick and the production team had to build a film that feels brutal, accessible, emotional, and commercially direct all at once. That is not an easy balance. What makes this production journey interesting is that the film seems to belong to a vanishing middle category. The grounded, mid-budget action thriller built on recognizable stars, real locations, and practical pressure. Not a superhero franchise, not tiny indie minimalism, not algorithmic content with no cinematic identity, something tougher, something older in spirit. The kind of movie that depends on craft departments doing invisible work, so the audience simply feels trapped, heated, frightened, and invested. And that invisible work matters because behind-the-scenes choices become on-screen truth. The locations shape the tension. The title shapes expectation. The choreography shapes credibility. The cast preparation shapes whether Brotherhood feels earned or merely announced. Every production decision either deepens the pressure chamber or pokes holes in it. But after the production wraps and the final cut reaches audiences, the conversation changes completely. Craft becomes commerce. Vision meets marketing. And for Brothers Under Fire, the next question is unavoidable. How does a gritty action thriller like this perform in a marketplace crowded with franchises, streaming releases, and audience fatigue? The commercial story of Brothers Under Fire is not the story of a blockbuster trying to conquer the world. That matters. This is a vertical release, launched in limited theaters and on digital platforms on April 17, 2026, which places it in a very different business category from wide theatrical action spectacles. The goal here is not a billion-dollar run, massive premium format screens, or months of box office dominance. The goal is leaner. Use a recognizable star, a clear genre hook, and home viewing accessibility to find the audience where this kind of mid-budget thriller now often lives. That release strategy tells you almost everything about the market position. A film like this is built for action fans, Kiefer Sutherland loyalists, and viewers browsing digital rental platforms for something direct, violent, and familiar. In another era, Brothers Under Fire might have lived as a sturdy theatrical programmer, one of those action titles that filled multiplex screens between bigger studio releases. In 2026, that lane has changed. Theatrical space is dominated by brands, sequels, animation, horror events, and superhero-scale spectacle. Smaller action films have to fight from the margins. The available box office reporting reflects that reality. Box Office Mojo lists a limited April 17, 2026 release, with no major domestic gross reported on the main release page, while the numbers has a financial page but no publicly listed production budget or full box office breakdown available for casual viewing. That absence is not meaningless. It suggests the theatrical run was not the primary commercial engine, or at least not large enough to generate the kind of public box office footprint that wide releases receive. Internationally, there are traces of theatrical activity. Box Office Mojo South Africa 2026 chart lists Brothers Under Fire at $28,212 from 22 theaters, released there on April 17. That is not a breakout number, but it fits the pattern. Modest international theatrical play, likely supporting a broader digital and ancillary strategy rather than driving the entire financial model. For this kind of film, theatrical grosses can function almost like visibility marketing. The real afterlife begins when viewers see the poster while scrolling. And that is where Kiefer Sutherland becomes the commercial anchor. His name means something to a specific audience, not necessarily teenagers chasing the newest franchise, but adults who remember 24, who associate him with crisis, command, and ticking clock tension. That kind of recognition has value in the digital marketplace. A viewer may not know the director, the writers, or the production companies, but Sutherland, holding a weapon in a cartel survival thriller? That communicates the product instantly. The movie also benefits from a premise that sells in one sentence. Soldiers on leave for a wedding in Mexico are pulled into war with a cartel. Clean, marketable, no homework required. In the current action marketplace, clarity is currency. Audiences browsing at home do not always want lore. They want to know the threat, the star, the tone, and the promise. Brothers Under Fire delivers that promise bluntly. Brotherhood, revenge, survival, gunfire, done. But that clarity has a downside. Familiarity can become invisibility. Cartel thrillers are crowded territory, and the shadow of Sicario still hangs over almost every modern film involving militarized violence and drug war tension. Without exceptional reviews, viral buzz, or a major theatrical push, Brothers Under Fire had to rely on genre appetite rather than cultural urgency. That is a tough commercial road. Audiences may watch it, but they may not talk about it. The 2026 marketplace around it was not gentle either. Bigger studio titles were dominating public attention, with films like the Super Mario Galaxy movie, Project Hail Mary, and other major releases sitting at the top of the yearly box office conversation. Against that kind of noise, a gritty limited release action film has to accept a smaller lane. It is not failing by refusing to compete with giants. It is playing a different game entirely. So commercially, Brothers Under Fire looks less like a theatrical event and more like a targeted genre product. That is not an insult. Many action films now survive through digital rentals, streaming licensing, international sales, and long-tail viewership. The question is not whether it could beat franchise movies. It never could. The question is whether its budget, sales deals, and platform performance aligned well enough to make the project worthwhile. Since the production budget has not been publicly disclosed, any hard profit claim would be guesswork. What we can say is that the film's business model appears practical: limited theatrical exposure, digital availability, recognizable star, straightforward genre appeal, internationally sellable premise. This is the economy of modern mid-tier action cinema. Not glamorous, but durable. These films may not dominate headlines, yet they keep moving through platforms, territories, and late-night viewing choices. They are built for discoverability more than event status. And maybe that fits the movie's identity. Brothers Under Fire is not trying to be the loudest film in the marketplace. It is trying to be the one that catches a viewer looking for something tense, physical, and uncomplicated enough to start immediately. Commercially, that means its success cannot be judged only by opening weekend numbers. Its real test is endurance: rentals, recommendations, streaming placement, and whether action fans remember it after the credits. Because once the money conversation settles, the next question becomes harsher and more revealing. Did critics and audiences actually respond to the film's pressure, performances, and survival thriller construction? Or did they see only another familiar cartel action movie in a crowded field? Reception around Brothers Under Fire feels exactly like the movie itself: direct, divided, and operating in a smaller lane than prestige cinema. This was never positioned as the kind of release that generates 100 major critics' essays by opening weekend. Vertical gave it a limited theatrical and digital release on April 17, 2026, which means its critical footprint is naturally lighter than a studio tentpole. Fewer reviews, less noise, more dependence on genre viewers finding it through digital platforms. That limited footprint shapes the conversation. On Rotten Tomatoes, the visible audience response leans toward viewers defending the movie as a solid, straightforward action thriller rather than a masterpiece. That distinction matters. People praising Brothers Under Fire are not usually claiming it reinvents the genre. They are saying it delivers what it promises: Kiefer Sutherland, survival tension, cartel danger, believable action, and enough emotional weight to justify the violence. The more skeptical reaction hits the familiar pressure point: originality. Mark Review's movies called it competent in moments but otherwise generic, arguing that the film does what many thrillers of this type already do. That criticism is fair because Brothers Under Fire walks through well-worn territory: soldiers, cartel, revenge, extraction, moral pressure. We have seen these pieces before. The question is whether the arrangement feels alive enough to overcome familiarity. Some online reviews were more forgiving, especially towards Sutherland. A recurring response is that his presence gives the movie credibility even when the script leans on expected genre beats. That makes sense. Sutherland is the film's strongest cultural bridge. He brings the ghost of 24 with him: command under pressure, ticking clock energy, crisis leadership, and viewers already know how to read that face in danger. The letterboxd-style response appears rougher and more impatient. Some viewers dismissed it as boring or overly familiar, which points to the movie's biggest risk in the streaming era. When audiences have unlimited action options, solid can feel invisible. A film can be competently made and still disappear if it does not offer one unforgettable sequence, one wild twist, or one emotional punch that forces people to talk about it. Culturally, Brothers Under Fire did not become a phenomenon. No huge meme wave, no awards conversation, no major controversy pushing it into mainstream debate. But that does not mean it has no place. Its cultural identity is quieter. A throwback-style mid-tier action thriller for viewers who miss grounded genre movies with recognizable adult stars and practical stakes. Not every film needs to dominate the discourse. Some just need to satisfy the audience that came looking. The split response also reveals something bigger about modern action viewers. Some want reinvention. Others want execution. If you come to Brothers Under Fire asking for a new Sicario, the film may feel thin. If you come asking for a tense, contained Sutherland-led survival thriller, it likely plays better. Expectations are everything here. The movie's reception is not just about quality. It is about what kind of action cinema people still have patience for in 2026. And here's where the criticism gets interesting. Calling the film generic is not automatically wrong, but generic does not always mean worthless. Genre is built on repetition. The real question is whether the repetition has force. Does the fear land? Does the grief sting? Does the violence feel like consequence rather than choreography? For sympathetic viewers, the answer seems to be yes enough. For harsher viewers, not enough. That puts Brothers Under Fire in a familiar but respectable category. Flawed, efficient, actor-driven, more durable as a late-night discovery than as a theatrical event. It may not change action cinema, but it reflects a corner of the genre that refuses to die. The gritty survival thriller where exhausted men make bad choices under worse conditions. And after the reviews settle, the final judgment has to go deeper than scores. The real question is what the film is actually saying about brotherhood, violence, revenge, and the terrible moment when survival stops being enough. The final idea inside Brothers Under Fire is simple and ugly. Brotherhood can save men, but it can also drag them deeper into hell. Loyalty looks noble from a distance. Up close, under gunfire, it becomes complicated. Do you protect the living or avenge the dead? Do you follow the mission or follow the wound? That is the film's real battlefield, not Mexico, not the cartel, not the road out. The real battlefield is the moment grief starts pretending to be duty. Captain Jordan Wright embodies that conflict. Kiefer Sutherland's presence gives the character weight because Wright feels like a man who understands consequence and still cannot fully escape rage. That is the tragedy. Experience does not make him immune. Training does not purify him. When violence strikes the squad, brotherhood becomes fuel, and fuel burns. The film's strongest thematic move is showing how easily survival can mutate into revenge when the people beside you become more than teammates. They become family. The wedding setting deepens that idea beautifully. Weddings are promises, loyalty, union, shared future. Then the movie throws soldiers into that sacred space and lets violence corrupt the ceremony. Two forms of brotherhood collide, the chosen brotherhood of soldiers and the intimate bonds of family. Both are vulnerable. Both can be shattered in seconds. That contrast gives the film more emotional meaning than its familiar cartel thriller shell might suggest. Revenge is where the movie becomes morally uneasy. On the surface, revenge gives action films momentum. Someone dies. Someone pays. Clean. Satisfying. But Brothers Under Fire works best when revenge feels less like justice and more like infection. Every retaliatory decision may bring temporary control, but it also pulls the characters further from the peace they were supposed to be celebrating. The violence does not restore anything. It only changes who survives carrying the damage. That is why the film's grounded style matters. If the action were glossy, the theme would collapse. This story needs dirt, sweat, ringing ears, and exhausted faces. It needs the audience to feel that violence costs something. The more physical the filmmaking becomes, the more the message lands. War does not stay neatly inside war zones. It follows people home, it waits inside training, memory, instinct, and grief. Then one terrible event wakes it up. As a genre piece, Brothers Under Fire is not revolutionary. It does not reinvent the cartel thriller or rewrite the military action playbook. The premise is familiar, the emotional arc is direct, and some viewers will find the structure predictable. Fair. But predictability is not the same as failure. The question is whether the film gives familiar material enough pressure, texture, and emotional bite to justify the ride. At its best, it does. Its strongest asset remains Sutherland. He gives the movie gravity even when the story risks drifting into standard action beats. Ashton Sanders brings quiet internal damage. The supporting cast widens the human stakes. Justin Chadwick's direction, at least in concept and execution style, keeps the focus on pressure rather than fantasy. That combination gives the film a sturdy identity. Not spectacular, but serious-minded, not groundbreaking, but committed. The weakness is that the movie may not fully escape the shadow of better, harsher borderland thrillers. Sicario turns similar territory into political nightmare. The Gray turns survival into existential grief. Brothers Under Fire sits somewhere more conventional than both. It has weight, but not always surprise. It has tension, but maybe not enough uniqueness to become unforgettable. That is the honest verdict. Still, there is value in a film that understands its lane. This is not franchise mythology. It is not superhero escalation. It is a compact action thriller about men whose loyalty becomes both weapon and wound. For viewers who want grounded survival tension, older school action pacing, and Sutherland doing what Sutherland does best, holding chaos together with a face that already looks haunted, it delivers enough. The legacy of Brothers Under Fire will probably be modest. It will not define 2026 cinema. It will not become a cultural monument, but it may find the audience these films are built for: late-night action fans, Sutherland loyalists, viewers who miss mid-budget thrillers where bullets hurt and heroes look tired. Sometimes that is enough. Not every movie has to reshape the genre. Some just have to remind us why the genre still works. Because beneath the gunfire, beneath the revenge, beneath the familiar machinery, Brothers Under Fire leaves one hard truth behind. The people you love can keep you alive, but they can also become the reason you walk willingly into the fire.